Greetings, my fellow adventurers. It's Elara. Welcome back to our cozy sanctuary, where the flickering firelight and the echoes of medieval valor come alive in tales of courage and sacrifice. Tonight, we ride into place where steel clashes, banners fly, and the resolve of a few can decide the fate of a kingdom. So, find your most comfortable spot. Let the warmth of the hearth ignite your imagination, and prepare to journey into a gripping tale of loyalty, strategy, and a stand against overwhelming odds. Let me know in the comments where you're from and which tales you'd love to hear next. Let's begin. The Siege of Ravenstone. The land of Ravenstone, nestled in the lush valley of Ashenvale, was a beacon of prosperity and peace. Its walls were sturdy but modest, and its people were farmers, blacksmiths, and merchants, not warriors. Yet, Ravenstone's peace was shattered when rumors of an approaching army reached the ears of its ruler, Lord Richard Fairfax. At the heart of this crisis stood Sir Thomas Ashbury, a knight renowned for his unwavering loyalty and unmatched skill with a blade. The enemy, led by the ruthless warlord Ealdred Blackstone, sought to claim Ravenstone's fertile lands and strategic location. His forces were vast, numbering in the thousands, while Ravenstone could muster only a few hundred men. Farmers with pitchforks, blacksmiths wielding hammers, and a handful of trained soldiers. In the great hall of Ravenstone's keep, Sir Thomas addressed the council. The faces around him were pale with fear. "My lord," Thomas began, his voice steady, "our numbers are few, but our resolve must be unshakable. If we surrender, we will lose more than our lands. We will lose our honor, our families, and our future." Lord Richard, a man burdened with the weight of leadership, nodded gravely. "And if we fight, Sir Thomas, can you defend these walls with so few?" Thomas's gaze swept the room. "We do not need to match their numbers. We need to outwit them. The walls of Ravenstone are strong, and its people are stronger. Give me command of the defenses, and I swear to hold the line." The council murmured among themselves, but it was Richard who spoke. "You have my trust, Thomas. May your courage inspire us all." As the enemy army approached, Thomas wasted no time preparing Ravenstone's defenses. He divided the villagers into groups, archers on the walls, pike wielders at the gates, and reserves ready to fill gaps in the line. The blacksmiths worked day and night, crafting crude weapons and reinforcing the gates with iron. On the eve of the siege, Thomas stood atop the battlements, addressing the defenders. "Look around you," he called out, his voice carrying over the assembled crowd. "You stand beside your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors. Today, we fight not just for our land, but for each other. They may be many, but we have the advantage of home. Trust in your training, trust in your courage, and trust in me. Together, we will show them what it means to face the people of Ravenstone." The defenders roared their approval, and even the most timid among them felt a spark of hope. At dawn, Ealdred Blackstone's army surrounded the city. Siege engines rumbled forward, and the ground trembled under the weight of their advance. The air was thick with tension as the first volley of arrows darkened the sky. Thomas, clad in gleaming armor, moved along the walls, shouting commands and rallying his men. "Hold your fire!" he bellowed. "Wait until they're within range." The enemy drew closer, their war cries echoing off the stone walls. When the first battering ram approached the gates, Thomas raised his sword. "Now loose the arrows." A hail of arrows rained down, cutting through the enemy ranks. Pitch and oil were poured over the battlements, followed by torches that ignited the battering ram in a fiery blaze. Cheers erupted from the defenders, but Thomas's face remained grim. He knew this was only the beginning. For 3 days and nights, the siege raged on. The walls of Ravenstone were battered but unbroken. Thomas barely slept, his armor stained with soot and blood, as he led counterattacks and reinforced weak points. The villagers fought with a tenacity that surprised even the seasoned soldiers among them. On the 4th day, Ealdred Blackstone grew impatient. At dawn, he unleashed his full force in a final, devastating assault. Siege towers rolled toward the walls, and ladders were hoisted by desperate soldiers. The air was filled with the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded. At the main gate, Thomas fought alongside his men, cutting down enemy after enemy with his gleaming longsword. A soldier beside him fell, and Thomas stepped into the gap, his shield deflecting a blow meant for another. Despite his exhaustion, his movements were precise and deadly. On the wall, a young archer named Edwin, no more than 16, shouted, "Sir Thomas! They're breaching the southern wall." Thomas's heart sank, but he did not falter. "Hold the gate," he commanded, rallying the defenders. "I'll handle the south." Racing through the streets, Thomas gathered a small band of fighters and reached the crumbling wall just as the enemy poured through. The battle was chaos, but Thomas's presence turned the tide. His sword flashed like lightning, and his commands were clear and unyielding. Amid the chaos, Thomas came face to face with Ealdred Blackstone. The warlord was a hulking figure in black armor, his blade as cruel as his reputation. "So, this is the night they whisper about," Aldred sneered. "Let's see if you bleed like the rest." Their duel was fierce, each strike echoing like thunder. Ealdred's brute strength clashed with Thomas's skill and precision. Around them, the fighting paused as both sides watched the two leaders battle for the fate of Ravenstone. With a final desperate move, Thomas sidestepped Ealdred's swing and drove his sword into the warlord's chest. Ealdred fell to his knees, his army faltering as their leader crumpled to the ground. "Ravenstone stands," Thomas said, his voice ringing with conviction. As the sun set that evening, the remnants of Ealdred's army fled, their siege broken. The villagers emerged from their homes, weary but victorious. Thomas, though wounded and exhausted, stood before them, his sword raised high. "This victory is not mine own," he declared. "It belongs to all of you, the people of Ravenstone. Together, we have proven that courage and unity can overcome any foe. Cheers erupted, echoing through the valley as the people celebrated their hard-won freedom, though the scars of the siege would remain. Ravenstone's spirit was unbroken, and its people knew they had a hero in Sir Thomas Ashbury. A kingdom without its king. The northern lands of Northumbria, rich in history and home to rolling green hills, had long been ruled by King Henry of Hexham, a fair and wise ruler. But peace was a fleeting dream. Border conflicts with the Scots had reached a boiling point, forcing King Henry to lead his army northward. The fateful battle at Stirling Field saw heavy losses for Northumbria, and when the smoke cleared, King Henry was gone. His horse had returned without its rider, and whispers of his death spread like wildfire. Weeks passed, and the kingdom stood on the brink of chaos. The nobles argued over succession, the common folk feared an invasion, and the once thriving court grew silent with despair. Amid the uncertainty, Sir William of York, one of the king's most trusted knights, approached the grieving Queen Eleanor. "My lady," William said, kneeling before her, "I do not believe our king is dead. If there is even the faintest chance he still draws breath, I must seek him out." Queen Eleanor's tired eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. "You have always been his most loyal knight, William. If anyone can find him, it is you. But promise me, if you fail, you will return. This kingdom cannot afford to lose you too." William stood, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "I swear, my queen, I will bring him back, or I will return with the truth." William wasted no time assembling a small but capable group for the perilous journey. Isabella of Durham, a sharp-eyed archer, and one of the few women who had earned respect on the battlefield. Thomas of Nottingham, a grizzled and pragmatic former mercenary who owed William his life. John of Lindisfarne, a monk with a sharp intellect and knowledge of local geography. The group departed under the cover of night, their destination, the battlefields near Stirling. The journey was fraught with challenges. As they approached the borderlands, the terrain grew harsher, the forests darker, and the roads more treacherous. At the site of the battle, they found shattered shields, broken arrows, and the rotting remnants of war. But among the debris, Isabella discovered a torn piece of fabric bearing the royal sigil. "This was his," she said, handing it to William. "Then he was here," William replied, gripping the fabric tightly. "But where did he go?" A passing villager, an older man with a wary expression, claimed to have seen a group of riders escorting a wounded man north. "They were heading toward the Scottish lowlands," the man muttered. "Looked like they didn't want to be followed." The trail led them deeper into hostile territory. At a small border town, they encountered a band of armed brigands demanding tolls for passage. Thomas, ever the tactician, proposed a distraction while the others slipped through. "Leave this to me," he said with a grin, tossing his cloak aside to reveal a set of daggers. While Thomas held the brigands at bay, William and the others pressed onward. They reached a desolate hamlet, where an innkeeper whispered of a captive nobleman being taken to Edinburgh Keep. The pieces began to fall into place. The group approached Edinburgh under the cover of darkness. The fortress loomed before them, its stone walls tall and imposing. Inside, they knew, was the king, or his captors. John devised a plan. "We'll pose as traders seeking refuge," he suggested. "Once inside, we can find where they're keeping him." Disguised as weary travelers, the group entered the keep. The guards, suspicious but unmotivated, allowed them passage. Isabella kept her hood low, her bow hidden beneath her cloak, while William feigned exhaustion to hide his weaponry. Within the keep, they overheard servants whispering about a prisoner locked in the lower dungeons. The group waited until nightfall, slipping past the guards and descending into the damp, torchlit corridors of the keep. In the farthest cell, they found him, King Henry, gaunt but alive. "William," he croaked, recognition sparking in his tired eyes. "You came." "I never doubted you were alive, my liege," William said, kneeling before the bars. "But we must move quickly. The enemy knows no mercy." As they freed the king, the sound of boots echoed through the halls. Their escape had been discovered. Guards poured into the dungeon, swords drawn. The group fought valiantly. Isabella's arrows flew true. Thomas's daggers danced in the dim light, and William's blade cut through their foes. Even John wielded a staff to defend himself. The final obstacle was the captain of the guard, a hulking brute who blocked their path to freedom. William stepped forward to face him. Their duel was brutal, but William's skill and determination proved superior. With a final strike, the captain fell, and the group fled into the night. Their journey back to Northumbria was slow and fraught with danger, but the sight of King Henry riding into the capital brought tears of joy to the people. Bells rang, and the streets filled with cheers. The king addressed his subjects from the castle balcony. "My people," he said, his voice steady despite his ordeal. "I owe my life to these brave souls who refuse to abandon hope. Let their courage remind us all that even in the darkest times, unity and loyalty will see us through." Sir William and his companions were hailed as heroes, their names forever etched into the annals of Northumbria's history. As for the kingdom, the return of its king marked the beginning of a new era, one built on resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a ruler and his people. The last stand. The gentle hills of Northumberland rolled out like an emerald sea under the morning sun, a stark contrast to the darkened past of Sir Aldwin of Eldwick. Once a celebrated knight, Aldwin had seen his share of bloodshed, victories, and loss. But after a fateful campaign left his closest friend and lord, Baron Lionel of Redmarch, to die on the battlefield, Aldwin had abandoned his sword. Now, he lived a quiet, solitary life as a farmer on the edge of the moors. That peace was shattered when a young woman rode into his yard, her horse lathered in sweat. She was Marianne of Redmarch, the Baron's daughter and Aldwin's goddaughter. Her face was pale, her voice trembling with urgency. "Sir Aldwin," Marianne began, "Redmarch is under siege. My father is gone, and the council will not send aid. We are alone." Aldwin's heart sank. "Your father is gone?" he asked, his voice heavy. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. killed last winter by brigands. I now hold his title, but I am no baron. I lack his strength, his wisdom. The people look to me, but I am lost without him." Aldwin looked away, guilt weighing heavily on him. It was his failure that Lionel had died. He had sworn to protect the Baron and his family, and now the burden of that broken vow had returned. "I cannot fight, Marianne," he said, shaking his head. "I am no longer a knight." Marianne stepped closer, her voice soft but resolute. "You once told me that honor is not a shield we wear, but a fire we carry. The people of Redmarch need you. Will you let them burn?" Aldwin closed his eyes. He felt the weight of her words, the echoes of his own teachings. At last, he stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "For your father, and for you, I will come. But know this, I am not the man I once was." The keep of Redmarch stood perched on a rocky hill, its walls weathered but sturdy. When Aldwin arrived, he found the garrison undermanned and poorly equipped. Most of the defenders were farmers and tradesmen who had never held a sword, let alone fought in battle. The sight of their weary faces only deepened his resolve. "Who commands here?" Aldwin asked. A young man stepped forward. "I do," he said. His name was Thomas of Renthorpe, a blacksmith by trade who had taken up leadership in desperation. "We've done our best, but we're outnumbered 3-1. If they attack, we won't last the day." Aldwin placed a reassuring hand on Thomas's shoulder. "You've done well to hold this long. Let's see what we can make of this mess." Over the next days, Aldwin took charge of the defenses. He worked alongside the villagers, teaching them to build barricades and fashion weapons from whatever scraps they could find. The women of the village boiled oil and gathered stones to hurl from the walls. Children carried water to the workers. Every able body had a role to play. Marianne insisted on joining the preparations, training with a bow under Aldwin's watchful eye. She was determined to prove her worth, though Aldwin could see the weight of leadership was already taking its toll on her. One evening, as they inspected the battlements, Marianne confessed her fears. "Even with all this, it won't be enough," she said. "How can we stand against an army?" Aldwin looked out over the horizon. "We stand because we must," he said. "Not for glory, but for the lives behind these walls. And if we fall, we do so knowing we gave them a chance." At dawn, the enemy arrived. The plains before the keep filled with soldiers bearing the banner of Lord Osric of Wakefield, a rival noble who sought to claim Redmarch for his own. Osric's forces vastly outnumbered the defenders, but Aldwin stood firm, his presence a pillar of strength for those who had never seen war. The first assault came swiftly, arrows darkening the sky, as ladders were raised against the walls. Aldwin moved through the chaos, rallying his fighters. Marianne, stationed atop the gatehouse, loosed arrow after arrow with newfound precision. Thomas led the villagers in repelling the ladders, his blacksmith's hammer proving as deadly as any blade. As the day wore on, the defenders began to falter. The enemy breached the outer gate, forcing the villagers to retreat to the keep's courtyard. Aldwin knew this was their last stand. "We hold them here," he shouted, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "For Redmarch!" The fighting in the courtyard was relentless. Aldwin fought like the knight he once was. his blade cutting down enemies with precision and purpose. He moved through the chaos, shouting orders and bolstering the morale of his outnumbered fighters. His every strike was a reminder of his decades of experience, his every motion filled with the determination to protect those behind the walls. But as Aldwin cut down another enemy soldier, a shadow loomed behind him. Osric, clad in dark armor and wielding a serrated blade, approached with cold, calculated steps. The noise of the battlefield masked his approach, and Aldwin, focused on the fight ahead of him, never saw the strike coming. Osric plunged his sword into Aldwin's back. The older knight staggered, a gasp escaping his lips as the blade pierced his armor. Blood pooled at his feet as Osric withdrew the weapon, allowing Aldwin to collapse to the ground. The clamor of battle seemed to fade for a moment, as though the world itself mourned the fall of the knight. From across the courtyard, Thomas of Renthorpe saw the betrayal. "No!" he bellowed, dropping his hammer and charging toward Osric. His fury burned brighter than his fear. Osric turned to face this new challenger, a smug grin on his face. "Another lamb to the slaughter?" he sneered. Thomas grabbed a fallen sword from the ground, his hands trembling with rage. "You'll pay for that," he growled. The two men circled each other in the blood-soaked courtyard, the sounds of the battle raging around them. Osric, confident in his skill, lunged first, his strikes fast and brutal. But Thomas, though less experienced, fought with a raw determination born of loss and anger. He parried Osric's attacks, each clash of steel ringing through the air. "You think you can avenge him?" Osric taunted. "You're nothing but a blacksmith playing at war." Thomas said nothing, his focus unbroken. He deflected another blow, stepping to the side and slashing at Osric's exposed side. The blade connected, drawing blood, and Osric's grin faltered. The duel continued, both men landing blows, their movements growing slower as exhaustion set in. Osric, desperate to end the fight, swung wildly, leaving himself open. Thomas seized the opportunity, driving his sword through Osric's chest. The enemy lord staggered, his sword slipping from his grasp as he fell to his knees. "This isn't over," Osric rasped before collapsing. Thomas stood over him, his breath ragged, blood dripping from his blade. Around him, the remaining enemy soldiers, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. The defenders of Redmarch had held. Thomas dropped to his knees beside Aldwin's lifeless body. Marianne rushed to join him, tears streaming down her face. The sight of Aldwin's still form, the man who had led them, protected them, and inspired them, was almost too much to bear. "He saved us," Thomas said, his voice thick with grief. "But we couldn't save him." Marianne placed a hand on Aldwin's shoulder, her voice trembling. He knew this would be his last battle, and yet he still fought for us. The surviving defenders gathered around them, their faces solemn. Though their victory was hard won, it felt hollow without Aldwin to share it. Marianne stood, her voice steady despite her tears. "We will honor him," she said, "and we will rebuild, not just for ourselves, but for the legacy he left behind." In the weeks that followed, Redmarch began to heal. The people rebuilt their homes and lives. their spirits buoyed by the memory of Aldwin's sacrifice. A statue was erected in the keep's courtyard, depicting him as he had lived, a protector, a leader, and a symbol of unyielding courage. Thomas, though reluctant, took on a leadership role in the garrison, his actions in the battle earning him the respect of the people. Marianne ruled with wisdom and compassion, her resolve strengthened by the lessons Aldwin had taught her. And though Aldwin was gone, his legacy lived on in the hearts of those he had saved. His name became a legend, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, one man's courage could inspire an entire people to rise. As the tale of valor, sacrifice, and the echoes of knightly honor comes to a close, let the journey through the embattled lands of Red March remind us of the delicate balance between duty and sacrifice. Remember, my fellow adventurers, that even in the face of overwhelming odds and shadowed trials, the strength to stand firm and the resolve to pursue what is just can guide us through the storm. Thank you for joining me tonight. Until next time, may your dreams be filled with the clash of swords, the banners of noble houses, and the promise of new adventures yet to unfold. Good night.